On-shelf availability is one of the retail industry's most persistent and costly issues, and that's why we're excited to be joined today by Mike Graen, known by many in the industry and in academia as being one of the top experts when it comes to the evaluation and implementation of technologies and solutions for delivering on-shelf availability improvements. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today, and glad you could be a part of Winning with Walmart.
My pleasure, Matt. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. If you would take a little time to introduce yourself and talk about the role that on-shelf availability has played in your long career.
Thank you again for the opportunity. I've been basically in the retail supplier industry for a little over 43 years. I started when I was 7, Matt. Don't do the math. It's not pretty. But I've been very, very blessed to be able to work with a bunch of really cool companies. I've got to spend 25 years at Procter and Gamble, 20 of them working lots of different opportunities inside of Walmart. And so having a seat at the table at Walmart, in the supply chain, in the technology chain was just fascinating to hear it from a Procter and Gamble point of view. Um, then I had an opportunity to leave Procter and Gamble a little bit early, retired earlier from them, and I actually left on a Friday and joined Walmart on a Monday. And so I got a whole different perspective from the retailer point of view, which I'd never seen before. It was a completely different perspective. And I spent the better part of 15 years inside of Walmart, working on all things basically on shelf availability. So it's everything from Tide detergent, is it on the shelf for a customer to buy, to apparel, is it on the shelf for the customers to buy? How do we measure it? We've got all these different kinds of products. Is there one solution that works very well for that? Got involved with RFID, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. Got involved with shelf scanning robots that would autonomously go down the aisle and take pictures of the in-store conditions to alert the associates when things need to be happening. So I did that for a number of years, and then I also spent a couple of years at Crossmark as a third-party solution provider, if you will. So it's been interesting to see the three legs of the stool: the supplier side, the retailer side, and and the solution provider side. What's interesting is they all agree on two things. Number one, we're here to meet our customer or our shopper's expectations, whatever that means to them. So we can agree on that. Number two, everybody wants to sell more stuff, right?
Yeah.
When you get down to it, there's a lot of disagreement in the industry about where you happen to sit, but those are the two things that are very common. So what I tried to do is I tried to focus my business model. I'm now an independent contractor working for a number of really cool companies like Kroger and Nordstrom's and Procter and Gamble, et cetera. And what I've noticed is those two things reign true. So if we can stop talking about what we disagree about and talk about what we do agree on, we can spend more time figuring out what that is. And a lot of that is when I come into the store, if they don't have what I need, I will pull out my phone and I will get it from somebody. I don't have to rely on that retailer. So the retailers that understand that people are leaving the store frustrated because they came in to buy something and bought it through another mechanism, they're basically being fired by the customer, and they need to acknowledge that. And so that's been the fun part of that, is no matter where I go, these things really reign true.
Yeah. Well, you and I are both familiar with the data point that 24% of Amazon's e-commerce revenue comes as a result of a physical store being out of stock. So, if you would break down the fundamentals of on-shelf availability, comparing it to the former measurement, I grew up inside Walmart, and when I was at Walmart, it was all about in stock. But talk about sort of the fundamental breakdown of what on-shelf availability is, and compare that to sort of that old and outdated term in stock.
Yeah, and I've got a graphic that may help it a little bit more, but basically, when you think about this, the term on-shelfability and in stock are very, very different, okay? Typically, in stock is a measurement that a retailer has at their disposal. They could take two very clear numbers and do a calculation. In this particular case, the calculation is, what do I have on hand? Let's say I have 5. And what do I think the daily demand is? Let's say that's 5. So if I have 5 and I think I'll sell 5, I call myself in stock. That's what people typically do. Now, two fundamental issues with that, Matt. Fundamentally, number one is on hands rely on the on hand being accurate. And we all know in the industry, retail on hand accuracy is about 50 to 60%, not very good. So on hand by itself is an inaccurate number. And daily demand by default is a forecast of future sales that you can pretty much guess that that's probably going to be wrong too. So I take two bad numbers and use it to say, do I have the product in the store? The second big problem, and this is the one that really gets to folks a lot, just because I have it in the store doesn't mean it's on the shelf for somebody to buy or for an online picker to pick. If it's sitting in the back room somewhere, if I got a
Useless.
thousand of them to a customer, I'm not on the shelf. So OSA is a different measurement. And some people just call it shelf availability, or some people just call it availability. I don't care what term you use, but that number is different, which is the product available for the customer to purchase, or is it available for somebody to buy on behalf of the customer? Buy online, pick up in store kinds of capability, where a store associate or a third party is buying product on behalf of the customer and delivering it to them. Is it available for the customer to purchase? If it's not available for me to find, I got to go ask somebody or go get it from the back room, et cetera. I'm probably going to get out my phone and buy it from somebody else. So the challenge of this math is in stock's really easy to calculate because I got two numbers. I could just do the math. The trick is it available for the customer or the picker to get? And that's a much harder thing to measure.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the costs of an out of stock.
Well, lots of different costs, but I'm gonna give you some projections from my good friends at IHL and Tony D'Onofrio because they do a really good job of explaining that. The first one is this one here is from Tony, and he talks about a question about retail inventory distortion and out of stocks. And again, forget the out of. I just went out through a tirade about out of stocks not being a good measurement, but it's still a measurement, right? Reasons for out of stocks at worldwide at retail are for $707 billion because the shelf is empty. I go to buy it and it's not there. $707 billion. The causes, some of the causes of that are anywhere from it's in the store, but it's not on a shelf, to it's got stuck in the supply chain, or my personal favorite, which is the top one here. This one's even more staggering. Inventory distortion is a $1.7 trillion cost. Well, that's a big number. What does that mean? That means out of stocks, which means I don't have the product, or overstocks. I've got too much. And I showed you an example here a second ago, and I'll bring it back up again. Here's an example of a retailer. On the right-hand side, it says I have 4 of these shirts, and the system says I have 4 of those shirts. That's 100% accurate. The one on the left says I have 8 printer cartridges, and as you look on the shelf, there's none there. The on hand is 0. So, and by the way, printer cartridges, it's not like I can switch to a different cartridge. I got to have the one for my particular printer. So 9 times out of 10, I'm going to go ahead and go to an Amazon. It's ironic using the retailer's Wi-Fi. Let's say it's Walmart or Target or Best Buy. I'll use their Wi-Fi, thank you very much, to order it from their direct competitors. And the distortion we are seeing are things that are enormous. Things like upon stockouts, Prime members are 73% more likely to purchase other phone from competitors. And once in the store, Prime members are experience up to 55% more out of stocks is a phenomenal, scary number. If you're a retailer and you don't know exactly what you have and where it's located, and are you making it available to your customers, you're having people use your Wi-Fi to order from somebody else. And that's basically, as Sam Walton said, that's firing the retailer.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of us think in terms of you going to the store for Campbell's chicken noodle soup and they're out of stock. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna substitute it. No harm, no foul. Still get the sale. Customer's still happy. That's not always the case. I mean, you could end up losing the entire transaction and abandon cart, and eventually it starts to eat away at customer loyalty altogether.
Well, there's this term that the industry use called substitutability. That sounds like a really fancy academic term, but it to your point, if I go in to buy cream of mushroom soup and they don't have cream of mushroom soup, I might buy a bigger size than I needed. I may switch brands from Campbell's to the private label.
Yeah.
I may go to cream of chicken because it'll work pretty much the same. I have options. Cereal, I have options. Pop Tarts, I have options. Automotive tires for your car,
Right.
they don't have the ones you need for your car. I can't switch to a different size. I can't switch to a different ratings thing. Automotive batteries, I have to have the one I'm looking for. The printer cartridge example, those are very, very low substitutability. I can't switch. I'm looking for the one that you're looking for. And if you don't have that one, I'm going somewhere else. The other one that I love is electronics. People spend 3 days doing research on which TV and which features, et cetera. I go to the retailer, they don't have it. Well, how about this one here? No, I don't want that one. I've been doing the research. I know what I want. I'll go find it from somebody else saying, thank you very much. So here's the deal. The loyalty is with the consumer and the brand owner, the supplier. It's not with the retailer. And if the retailer can't provide what that shopper needs, they'll go somewhere else. They may not even tell you they're going somewhere else, but they're going to go somewhere else. This continues to be a major issue in the retail. By the way, the first time a retail store opened up, this was true, and it's still true in 2024, 2025 today.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask you. There's I asked this question somewhat rhetorically because I kind of know the answer, but why is on shelf availability such a tricky problem to solve? It's something that's had been wrestled with since the beginning of modern retail. Why is it something that is just so tricky to solve?
Yeah, I think the answer is there's not a simple solution. When you think about the key performance indicators that a retailer has to know, I have to know how many customers are coming into my store. I can count that based on the number of transactions I get. I want to be able to measure my sales. Are my sales going up or not? I want to be able to measure my profit. I want to measure my expenses. All these things are very easy to measure, right? The problem with on-shelf availability is it's not easy to measure. You have to make a conscious effort and investments. And let me cover this just really briefly. There's about 6 different ways you can measure it. None of them are like peanut butter that'll work everywhere for the most part. I can use an algorithm saying, hey, I seem to be selling this item at 12 to 15 per day, and then I just went to 0. That's a good indicator that's no longer on the shelf. Even if it says you have 12 in the building, uh, it allows you to be able to do that. You can have somebody walk around and take pictures of the shelf. That gives you exactly what the customer experiences. It's not very systemic. It's not scalable across all the stores, but that's an option. There are some companies like Woodman's that are investing in shelf scanning robots. This happens to be one called Badger Robotics. It goes down the aisles autonomously, doesn't have to ask associates to do it. The customers can be there, and it's telling you, giving you real time feedback of any out of stocks or missing products or incorrect pricing that you've got. And the last one that's pretty predominant is RFID, and I'm sure we'll talk about RFID, but that gives you a very, very fast, without a human having to physically touch every item, the ability to count exactly what you have and exactly where it's located. So there's a number of different tools to do that. There's a couple others. I won't get into those, but the bottom line is every one of these, Matt, are ways of measuring on-shelf availability. None of them are simple or cheap. It's a conscious decision that says, "I want to invest in this because it's my long-term goal." If you don't invest in this and you just use traditional systems like on hands and sales forecasts, you're really not gonna be able to measure what the customer is actually looking for.
Yeah. Well, and I think, the ability to read minds is probably the one big thing that's going to help, that's going to keep the industry from ever totally solving the problem, because as difficult as it is to maintain a store in stock based on projected foot traffic into the store. Now you've got buy online, pick up in store. So now you're trying to guess, yeah, as these stores become miniature distribution centers and shoppers are buying online and picking up there, it becomes even more difficult to read shoppers' minds and figure out what they're going to be consuming on any given day, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I actually have, in anticipation of that question, because it always comes up, I've known, Dr. Bill Hargrave
Mm.
for literally 20 years now. He started at the University of Arkansas, and I did a supply chain and retailing class for him, back in the day. Then he started the RFID lab at the University of Arkansas, did that for a couple of years, went to run the business school at Auburn. Now he's the president of the University of Memphis. So he's incredibly academic, but he's also very practical and a practitioner. He's a retail expert in this thing called omnichannel. And omnichannel is just a nice way of saying I can sell product out of my brick and mortar, I can sell it online, or I can do both. One of the things he always talks about is this topic called BOPUS, and you already kind of mentioned this: buy online, pick up in store. Everybody does that. Thank you very much, COVID. If you did anything for us, you created a new way to deliver product to customers because people didn't want to come in and shop in a store. They wanted it. I want to order it online and just deliver it to my car or deliver it to my house or whatever it happens to be. Well, he is a foreknown expert in this area called buy online, pick up in store. And he has a very interesting story. I'd love to share it real quick because he talks about his personal experience and why he's so passionate about this.
Pre-pandemic, retailers kind of looked at BOPUS kind of as a nice to have. It's like, yeah, I mean, we'll offer it as the consumers. For the pandemic, it became a lifeline for a lot of retailers, and many retailers were absolutely not prepared for that. What I would do is, knowing that that we had that they were executing poorly, here's why I do it after I started realizing this is really bad. So I would go into the store and I would have my mobile device with me. I'd make sure I wasn't on the Wi-Fi, I wasn't using their app, so they didn't know who I was and they didn't know I was in the store, right? And I would literally stand in front of a shelf looking at the product and go online and say, I'd like to buy this and pick it up in store. And I'm standing there looking at the product. And so I'll share with you some of the things that I got. For example, in apparel, I'm standing here, I'm looking at, there's 5 on the shelf. On my mobile device, it says, sorry, this product's unavailable at this location. I'm looking at, there's 4 on the shelf. Online, it says there's 1 left. Another apparel item, I'm looking at, there's 3 of them on the shelf. Online, it says it's out of stock. Wow. Another one, I'm looking at it, there's 9 on the shelf. It doesn't even appear on their website. So Mike, that I just want to share with you, that's just a handful. And that I've got tons of these where it's like, this is such poor execution that you're leaving money, or the retailers are leaving money on the table. It's a combination of factors. The biggest one, I believe, is that they simply don't know what they have in the store. And they just don't have any confidence in what they have in the store. So when you don't have confidence, you do a couple of things. One, either you just completely hide it, right? And so you just say, oh, that's not available, right? Or you don't even put it on the website to even make it an option.
Yeah. So as you can see here, he basically describes his personal experience of going to a website and literally looking to see if the product's online, and in fact it is or it isn't. And those are nowhere near reality when the customer finally gets in there. That's a big problem, because if you're a retailer in 2024, 2025, and you don't know exactly what you have and exactly where it's located to provide that to the customer, we've seen the Amazon numbers. They're going to go somewhere else. They're going to go buy it somewhere else because the consumer or the shopper is in charge, not the retailer. So they're going to find what they need, even if they have to go somewhere else. And I heard Sam Walton tell me once, he goes, Mike, for every 1 customer that complains to me, 7 don't complain. They just don't come back. Those are the ones that keep me up at night. It's those people who are not complaining. They're just finding their needs met by other retailers. And I want to make sure that that doesn't happen to us.
Yeah. So much of the burden is on Walmart and every other retailer as well to sort of know what's where, within their stores, within their distribution centers, all along the supply chain. But in what ways can suppliers get involved in helping to ensure their products are available in store and online when shoppers want them?
Well, I think, the term that I just used, which is whether you're a retailer or you're a supplier or you're a solution provider, you better know what you've got and you better know where it is, because if you don't, you're setting yourselves up for failure, in my opinion. So let's just walk through that example. We've got Walmart, who's the world's biggest retailer. We've got Procter & Gamble, who's the world's biggest CPG company. I think they both own the responsibility to know if their products are available for the customer, regardless of where the store is, what time of the day it is, or anything like that. And that means making an investment in measuring this thing called on-shelf availability. Here's an example of a different supplier that I work for. And we literally said, if it's that important to you, I want to track your on shelf availability. And I also want you to establish a goal. Now, their goal happened to be 95% of the time when a customer comes in, I want to be able to measure it. Well, their on in stock was 99.9%, off the chart good. This was their actual on shelf availability. It was somewhere between 91 to 95. Okay. Significantly less from there. So the answer to your question is, if you don't know what your on-shelf availability is, just like you know your sales and your profit and your inventory, et cetera, you better figure out how to measure that, because that's one of those things that is going to cause a customer to leave and never come back. You better be looking at this, and where you're not meeting expectations, you're putting plans in place to try and close those gaps. Suppliers have just as much responsibility of on-shelf availability as the retailer does, because they're responsible for making sure they deliver it to the retailer in a quality way, at the correct quantity, at the correct price, et cetera, so that retailer could do their job, which is getting it on the shelf.
Yeah. Well, in terms of supplier teams falling short, and what areas do you see that taking place?
Well, this is one that to me, most of them don't look at this. Most of them say, my job was to deliver the pallet of product to the Walmart or the Kroger or whatever distribution center. I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
done. I'm done. No, you're not. No, you're not, because you have responsibility and accountability to your shoppers to make sure your stuff gets all the way through to the shelf. That's my expectation, and I think we've got to quit allowing suppliers to go, "Hey, I did my job, which is to get it to the DC. It's now Walmart's job or Target's job, et cetera." No, you have responsibility to do that as well. There are things that you can do, including spending potentially retail coverage dollars to find out where their alerts are and get your product back on the shelf to help assist that particular retailer. I'm not saying you have to do that. That's a choice you have, but I'd much rather make sure my stuff's on the shelf than do some very fancy television ad that drives people to buy your products at the store and then it's not there. You're wasting your money. So I believe this is a joint responsibility to solution providers and retailers and suppliers. We all ought to be looking at this, that just like we're looking at sales and going, what's our goal and how we doing versus our goal? And if we're not meeting target, what interventions are we going to make? We should be thinking about this just like every other KPI. And it's not just the retailer's job, it's everybody's job.
Yeah. Because the reality is retail is a business of making and keeping promises. And when a supplier sits down with a retailer, they're promising to deliver this product at this price, and it's going to be, it's going to be on time. It's going to be available to shoppers. And the retailer has a similar sort of contractual, agreement, obligation to its shopper. We're going to have the products you want in stock and priced in a certain way. So not only does that supplier risk, losing a sale, they also risk at some point losing space within the store if they develop a reputation for not being able to keep those promises.
Yeah, I know you spent a lot of time at Walmart as well, Matt. And I'll tell you the number of times I've heard the story of, I went in to do a line review with my buyer, and my buyer said, these 3 SKUs I'm going to discontinue because I'm not selling very many of them. And I happen to know that those were the biggest on-shelf availability issues, whether it was the retailer that wasn't putting it on the shelf or we weren't shipping it, et cetera. And you go, wait a minute, this is a really good item. I can't help it. It hasn't been on the shelf. Oh yeah, you could have. You could have. So we're
Yeah.
discontinuing items because everybody's looking at sales versus what the expectation is. If you're not meeting expectations, your item comes off the shelf and somebody else goes on. If it's not on the shelf and you can't buy it, don't expect to sell as much as you hope to. So I have heard quotes from big suppliers saying moving my on-shelf availability from, not first off measuring it, then moving it from 93% to 95% was the biggest single sales lift we ever got, including any brand introduction we've ever done. Any brand introduction, just getting the product on the shelf for the customer. Because if it's a good product and the customer can get to it, you're going to sell stuff. This is not hard, right? But if it's a good product, but I can't find it anywhere and I've got to go through loops and hoops and everything to get it, forget it. I'll switch to a competitor or I'll order from Amazon. Thank you very much. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But wait a minute, I own the Walmart business. I don't care. I'm buying the product no matter. I don't care who I get it from. So
Yeah.
that to me is a big and everybody who's in this, who's listening to this, has gone into a store for a specific item in mind to go pick it up and they didn't have it. Everybody's had that experience. I can't think of one time I didn't teach a class or do a session like this and somebody goes, "Oh, every time I go in, I find everything I need." Nobody has that story. So the retailers that figure out how to meet those expectations are going to be around 5 to 10 years. The ones who are not may not be here around.
Yeah. You keep a close eye on innovation. In fact, I know you work alongside some companies that are doing amazing work in an attempt to solve some of these what I would call legacy issues. What have been some of the leaps forward that Walmart has tested and or launched in your career? What are some of the things that come to mind that have been just great big leaps forward?
Oh, there's been so many of them. I guess there's a couple that really stand out. The first is in 2015, I think it was. I knew you were thinking I was going to say RFID, but that's not where I'm going. They introduced a shelf scanning robot in the Walmart stores. I think we ended up putting in about 600 stores. Most of them were Bossa Nova Robotics. That company, unfortunately, is no longer around. And the other couple were a company called Badger Technologies. We had about 600 stores that had these shelf scanning robots. They were phenomenal to literally capture in-store conditions through the eyes of a shopper, like nothing ever could be. So that was one. Unfortunately, at Walmart, they've since pulled those out for a bunch of different reasons we don't need to get into. But that to me was an innovation that was well needed at that point in time. And I'm seeing these robots now scale in the industry at a very large pace. So that's the first one. The second one, and this one's gonna be an interesting one, but I'm seeing the introduction of electronic shelf labels, or some people call them digital shelf labels, expanding at a rapid rate. And it's not why people think. Most people think, well, they just wanna come up with a way of changing the price. Yes, that's part of it. Part of that's that labor to not have to go and do price changes. But the other part is it allows you to be able to educate people who are buying for product of customers, people who are stocking the shelves, or even in customers where the product is. How many times, Matt, have you gone in front of a shampoo and conditioner or hair color set and I'm gonna be a little bit generic here, but there's somebody on the phone going, "Now, honey, which color is it? Which one is it? Was it that one or no, it's not that one?" Which I mean, the number of hours, it's hilarious. You'll love to take videos of the poor people who have to do that. Well, imagine having a shopping list and you walk around the corner and you say, "Look down, look middle aisle. Do you see that thing blinking right there? That's the one you're looking for." There's no more treasure hunt. I know exactly what I'm looking for. That can be used by the retailer to find product, that can be used by the retailer to stock product, and it can be used by a customer to find product. So that's one. And then obviously I would be remiss if I didn't say radio frequency identification came along about 2005. It's now 2025. I don't see it slowing down. I see it, as a matter of fact, taking off it for different use cases. So those to me, those three interventions or the investments have stood the test of time for sure, and they've been dramatically increased and expanded throughout the industry. And I don't see anything slowing down. I think all three of those are going to continue to grow as we continue to try and figure out what we have on the shelf for our customers.
Yeah. Yeah. There have been some starts and stops with RFID, but you think it's here to stay.
It has been number of starts and stops. I've been involved with all of them. So I've started up no more than 5 RFID projects at Walmart or worked with the team that has done that and then shut them down for different reasons. We're not going to get into all that. It's here to stay. It is absolutely here to stay. There's no question in my mind. It's going to continue to grow from a use case perspective for a couple different reasons. Number one, It is extremely fast and it's extremely accurate to do exactly what we were showing in that first chart, which is to eliminate that whole inventory variation. Okay. That's absolutely true. Secondly, there's a number of other use cases beyond just what do you have and where's it located. Asset protection is looking at RFID in a big time way to figure out what's leaving the store that didn't get paid for and what did I pay for from a receiving standpoint that I never got. That to me are those two use cases are enormously helpful because today most retailers know what they lost or what they can't find when they do a yearly inventory. And all that tells you is, well, we lost X millions of dollars of business. I have no idea where it is. Well, let's reset the on and go from there. Having that inventory variation versus what you expect, or the shrink as we call it, once a year is not enough to be able to accurately make any changes to it. So that to me is going to be the use case that really is the future, is putting the infrastructure in place that allows you to be able to leverage them for that kind of purpose.
Yeah. So you and I are both technology nerds. But one of the reasons I think the industry respects you so much, though, is because you don't get excited about every shiny new toy that comes out. You recognize there's no such thing as a one size fits all, and you sort of alluded earlier in our conversation about the different options, but contextualize some of those options a little bit and tell us in which situations in Walmart in a Walmart environment are those solutions best suited to solving a problem as it relates to on-shelf availability?
Yeah, if we go through those, I think there's a number of different things that we can look at. I think some of these play better with certain kinds of products. So let me give you real briefly this one. This one is an algorithm that says I sold 12, I sold 16, then I sold 000. I think there's a problem.
Mhm.
Obviously, that has to be a pretty high level item. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna implement this technology on a green shirt extra
Low
small.
velocity. It needs to be something that's higher velocity in order to identify some sort of inconsistency with the trend line.
And that to me is one of the biggest issues I see the industry. They're trying to use a single approach for all products, and this is never gonna work with a skincare item in a Walmart store or a specific color shirt, etc. This is going to work really well with bananas and milk and eggs and cheese and detergent and paper towels and diapers. This is going to work really, really well. Something that's selling at least a handful a day. If it's selling one or two a month, I don't know if it's not on the shelf or it's just not selling. I can't tell. So that's the first one. It's got to be a high velocity item, and that works really, really well with. The second one, which is the store audits, whether it's a computer vision or somebody taking a picture, there's a bunch of different, we've done a bunch of podcasts with some of the solution providers out there. That's really nice for kind of, I think I have a problem, go do the research. It's not systemic. So Walmart has 4,000 stores, 365 days a week. I mean, you can't say, is that item is on the shelf 365 days a week in all 4,000 stores? You can't do that because you got to have people go take the pictures, et cetera. So this is really good for project kind of purposes. It's not really good for systemic kind of things. The robots are systemic. They're not real time. They can't tell you exactly at this moment is that product on the shelf, but it can tell you within the last few hours whether it was on the shelf or not. So I would use it for the products that it's basically scanning on this video right now. I probably would not use it for milk or eggs or cheese or stuff that I have to have it on all the time. I'd probably look at more fixed camera solutions for that, but that's one. And then I don't know of any algorithm or computer vision that's going to tell you how many smalls or mediums of these shirts you have. The right tool for the right job in that case happens to be RFID. From my perspective, that's one of the problems I think the retail industry has. And Matt, you know, I'm a big woodworker. I've got a shop out there. It's got 1,000 tools. I'm not a tool junkie just because I like the tools. I have 5 different ways to cut a board. They all have a specific purpose. They work really well for this kind of a cut. And trying to take some of these and spread them like peanut butter, like an algorithm over low velocity items or a robot trying to read clothes We got to use the right tool for the right job. Unfortunately, it's an investment by the retail supply chain to be able to do this. And I think that's not why it's hard. People don't want to make that investment. But the reality is, unless you're a pure play apparel supplier or something like that, you're going to have to make that investment because you got different products with different characteristics.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the future. I get really excited talking about robots. I've got a relationship with Badger Technologies, and I'll disclose that right up front. They're doing some amazing work today. They've got great big vision for tomorrow. So it's easy for me to see a day when there are robots inside every single store that are not just identifying opportunities and prioritizing those opportunities, but also able to fix some of those things on the fly. Putting an item on the shelf, changing pricing, whatever. Give us a glimpse based on your own points of view. What does the future look like inside Walmart, specifically as it relates to addressing on-shelf availability?
Well, that's a big question. Let me just try a couple of different things. Big umbrella kind of opportunities. I think there's two. I think the first one is really going to be what I would call a multi-sensor solution. Well, that sounds like a big four-letter kind of confusing academic. No, it's really not. It's an idea that we're going to blend these technologies together: computer vision, artificial intelligence, RFID, the 2D barcode, which we'll talk about in a second, Digimark, all of these all these technologies coming together to solve a problem, almost like all of the tools in my workshop coming together to be used by me to create something that I want. These things have to work together. And I don't think anybody's figured that out. We got a lot of people selling computer vision, AI. If I hear generative AI one more time, everybody's generative AI, RFID. They throw out the buzzwords. They don't talk about where it works and where it doesn't work. And the reality is they have to work together to be able to know exactly what you have and where it's located all the time. The second one to me is something which is people have discounted for a long time. The UPC as we know it is 50 years old this year. The UPC as we know it is probably going to migrate fairly substantially over the next couple of years, going from a single, what we call 1D barcode to a 2D barcode or maybe even a QR code. Why do we need that, Mike? Well, you need that because here's a concept that some of these solutions already have. Every selling unit has a unique code that includes the UPC and a unique serial number. Why do I need that, Mike? I don't need that. Yeah, you do. The reason for it is because just because you have it in the building doesn't mean it's available for sale. So this sunset, it's actually sunrise 2027 with GS1. They'll probably slap my hand for that one. Sunrise 2027 um, gives me the ability to capture that serialized item just like RFID is doing it and leverage them together. Okay. So to me, this is the kind of thing that we've got to figure out how to get done. Most retailers use a legacy system of UPC and quantity. Those have to get out of date. Let me give you a real quick example. Matt, I'm going to quiz you a little bit. You've just spent 3 days looking at the latest Samsung 75-inch TV for your place. Okay. You know the features, you know the refresh rate, you know the price point, you know the size, you know how you're going to mount it. You go into a Walmart and they say they have 3 of them. Now you think you think you know where I'm going to go, but I'm not. Matt, they actually have 3 of them. Their on hand is perfect because they're leveraging RFID for that. How many TVs are available for you to walk out of the store with?
I don't know. Depends on how
Well,
many
because
are.
well,
I would think I would think 3.
you're right. You're right. But here's the problem. TV number 1 is on the TV wall showing a
Right.
customer. It's already been
Display.
unboxed. It's out there. Is that item in inventory?
It is, but not
Is it
available.
available for sale?
It is
No,
not.
it's not. TV number 2, somebody took one of them out of the box and put a DVD. Do they even sell DVDs? They put a movie on it on the end of aisle to show the cool DVD player or whatever.
Being
That
used as
item's
display.
in inventory. Is it available? Is that TV available for sale?
Not
No, it is not.
available.
The third TV was sold, was brought home, and the customer didn't want it, so they brought it back to the store. The store associate gave them their money back and went and put it back in claims because they got to make sure it works before they put it on the shelf. So I got one on the wall, one on the display, one in the back room. How many TVs do I have in the building?
Yeah. 3 in the building.
How many can you walk away with?
Yeah. 0.
0. All right. So this unique serial number allows me to provide an attribute or a state and status to everything in the supply chain. How many loaves of bread are out on the sales floor and how many of them are out of date? They need to be marked down so we don't have to throw them away. Those kinds of questions can be done when we do unique serial number kinds of things. And to me, that's still very new in the industry. There are some people that get it. Most people are like, "No, I don't think we need that." Well, you're going to find out pretty quickly you do, because even if you get your on hand right, that doesn't ensure that the product you have is available for the customer to buy. So, multi-sensor solutions, all this stuff working together, and then serialization to me are the two things that are future bets. Now, by the way, I didn't talk about any technology here. These are just the concepts that have to work together. All these different tools have to work and be able to share the stuff back and forth seamlessly to be able to tell, do I have the product for the customer or do I not? That to me is the future. If that's my big bets.
Yeah. Mike, we talked a little bit about the past. We talked a little bit about the present, and certainly just looked ahead to talk a little bit about the future. In closing, what would be sort of your call to action, your charge to suppliers as they look to the year ahead? Where are the areas where they need to be investing, time and attention and maybe even resources in order to better partner with Walmart and tackling this complex issue of on shelf availability?
Well, the simple one is, can you systemically measure, not one time, can you measure your on-shelf availability at Walmart?
Do you know what's where?
Do you know what's where? Do you know if you've got 100 items, SKUs on the shelf at Walmart right now in every single store, what percentage of them are actually available for a customer or a picker to buy? My guess is most people can't answer that, right? They can't. They can read nil pick data from the omni-channel stuff at Walmart. They could read, various studies that maybe a field agent did, et cetera. But you can't say, can you tell me at this moment in time what items should be on the shelf that are not on the shelf? They can't do that. They're going to have to figure out how to do that, because to me, they own that as much as the retailer. We've already talked about that. That's one call to action. Um, and I only say that if you want to be around the next 50 years. Doug McMillon, when he came in, made a statement to the board of directors. I am here and I want to make sure we're here not 5 years from now, but 50 years from now. And if you look at the retail history, and I'll show you his screensaver. He may have changed this by now. He keeps this phone I can't talk. Screensaver. There we go. If you look at the retailers in the 1950s and the 60s and the 70s, it was Sears, it was Kmart, et cetera. They're gone. So retail has not been very, very kind to people. Do you want to be around and relevant? You better always wake up thinking about, I'm not really worried about concerns I've got. I'm worried about what I don't know. Who's out there who's trying to figure out how to do this? And to me, we've already talked about this. The shopper is ultimately in control by using this device to find what they're looking for. You may or may not be relevant if you don't figure out how to make sure you are on the top of their list. So that to me is the messaging for the retailer, for the suppliers. The other thing for the suppliers is this could be the biggest sales opportunity, just getting your stuff on the shelf. If you spend just a little bit of time in this area rather than just all the new brands and flavors and 50% more and all the gimmicky stuff that the marketing does. And I'm not trying to pick on marketing. They do a great work. But the reality is, you do a great marketing, you drive people to the store and then they can't find it, you're wasting a lot of money. So that to me is something that's going to be extremely important in the future.
Yeah. Mike, as always, it's great to spend some time with you. Appreciate the update and your points of view as we look at past, present, and future of winning with Walmart. We'll make it really easy for folks to find you and contact you. I know you've got enough going on, more going on than you can say grace over, but I know you're also willing to take at least a first conversation with anyone that has questions. So thank you so much. Great to see you. Have a great day.
Matt, I appreciate the opportunity, and I just want to thank you for your leadership. The work that you do in Northwest Arkansas, specifically winning with Walmart, and not only bringing my kind of concepts, but marketing and e-commerce and all the other kind of platforms you've doing. You're doing an incredible service to the Northwest Arkansas community, and we sure do appreciate all your help.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.